Good morning today from Botswana. I have a little story I'd like to share with you. You see, I'm not set up in the normal way for my videos, but I feel like it's kind of urgent. This is something that every Christian is going to have to face in their lives. If you're serious about serving Christ, you're going to grow in Him, and things are not just going to be a bed of roses all the time. And I'm facing kind of a situation like this right now. And it brings to mind another time when the Lord was teaching me this valuable lesson, something we can learn a lot of through the book of Job, as you will see. Uh, Nonetheless, years ago, my wife and I were impressed from the Lord. At one point, we were impressed that we should make a push to pay off the home. We have a small home. It was a mobile home. And I mean, I'm no good at finances, but in terms of we're trying to pay off our debts, we were coming into some extra money, by our jobs, and the Lord was pressing to saying you should, make a push to pay off the home. And so we were doing that. It was going very well, but we weren't long into that before our one car had another breakdown. I say another because it was an older car. We were getting older cars. That way we could pay them off and they wouldn't have much for insurance, things like that. But you would have to keep up with repairs sometimes. And we had had this particular car for 7 years. And as the car broke down, the Lord impressed upon me that if the repair weren't reasonable, if it was over $400, that I should finally say it's enough and let it go. And so it was over a $500 estimate. And so we let that go, turned the car in for scrap, continued to go on then, starting to save money for a car and to put money aside to pay off the home. Now, the way this had been arranged, this was right about summertime. It would have been like June, July, and August. And so we'd have only had one car then. But they were pretty good months, and it was only a 25-minute walk for me to get to work. And so on the days I had to go to work, it wasn't a big deal, and the weather was okay. So this was all kind of confirmed in prayer, and so it's like, okay, come September, we can really uh, see what the Lord has. So I was praying and praying and praying, looking for a minivan. I'm looking for a certain kind of minivan, but of course it has to be the right price. And so we're praying, and when these months went by, and everything, and the time came that I could purchase for like between $1,000 and $1,500 if I could find such a thing. And there it was. I just want to say there it was. I mean, I was watching for this for a while when it was available, but it came down to this one day. You see, I worked for a merchandiser printer, and so I had availability to see the ads a day before the paper came out. And so that really gave me an edge. And for some reason, in my spirit, this was really strange, but in my spirit, I knew the van was going to be there that day. I knew it. God had answered the prayer. I knew it. I opened the page when the printing came out. It was the kind of van I wanted. It was $1,000. It had low miles. Everything was right. Except the van was taken away from me. The person who owned the van surreptitiously on Sunday night put the van out in their yard and put a for sale sign on it. Somebody drove by and saw it and said, I want that. To make matters even more kind of a rub in the face, they didn't even have the money until Thursday. It was like late Thursday or Friday. They didn't have the money. I had the money in my hand to do this. I've been saving money for the van and putting away money on the home, things like that. And so I have to tell you, this was just a real shock to me. It was not the end of the world per se, but the timing of the van was, we had good weather for those months that I had to walk, and then we needed a second vehicle. I mean, for many years we only had one vehicle, but there was a reason why we had gotten a second one. And everything was there, and it just kind of blew me away. What happened? God had this here, and I knew it. This is something that's very strange. And so for the remainder of this, when I was coming to grips with this, things were, a little rough spiritually. I'm like, what's going on? What's going on? Eventually, in the end, my acceptance of everything came to be, I came to believe that God allowed the devil to steal away what he had provided. He allowed it. I mean, obviously, this is the way it was with Job, remember? It was the devil that was vexing Job, but of course God is still sovereign, and he has to allow it or disallow it. And then he works those things for our good. And this is very, very important to see. We may not understand everything, but there's always a mercy. There's the bright side. Maybe about a week after this had happened, and things are fine between the Lord and I and everything. But I hadn't even known it, but the Lord brings it to my attention how close we were to paying off the home altogether. I had no idea. I'm just so bad at that kind of thing. Probably not as bad now as I was, but I had no idea. We were really, really close. And at that point, he was showing me that within 8 weeks, it likely could be paid off. And that is taking the money that I had saved for the car and then putting that with the other things for the home, it could be paid off. And that is a savings of interest, which is, of course, very interesting to me. And so he showed us that. He poured out blessing. In fact, it wasn't 8 weeks. It was only 7. The Lord was just... All I have to say is that he works all things together for the good, like he promised, and we have to trust him. One of the things, of course, that I was concerned about is, we have 2 older cars, and we want the 2 in case something happens to the one. We have another one. That's part of the plan. And so, of course, that had to be prayed through. This was, again, the beginning of September that I was looking at this van. And it was actually only by the end of December then that I had it. I could have afforded it about 3 weeks earlier, but it's another story until the Lord gave me a minivan, and it wasn't the kind that I had been looking for, but we saw his hand in it, reducing the price to what he had allowed we could spend, different things like that. My biggest point simply to make in this video for all Christians is that there are going to come times we don't understand what God is doing. In some respects, this was only a minivan. This was only a vehicle. It's not as bad as some things. If there is a loved one who's very ill or something else, I can't even hardly imagine all the possibilities that could happen. But as Christians, not everything is going to go our way. God simply doesn't allow that. The scripture says in Hebrews 2 that his Son was made perfect through suffering. The captain of our salvation was made perfect through his sufferings. And we also then suffer in the flesh, which is only going to make heaven that much more glorious. But we also get to see his hand at work. Sometimes these things may take weeks, months, or years, and I dare say that we may never see. If you take the example from Hebrews chapter 11, it talks about, like the forefathers of faith, and just saying all of these died in faith without seeing the promise. But they had kind of seen them at a distance and welcomed them. They saw, the process of what God is doing. So I really urge you to just believe God in faith, because faith is the evidence of things not seen. Things are going to work out well. And they'll work out better because our perfect Father has them in his hand. How much do we love the Lord? How much do we trust him? As we grow in faith, those trials will increase. It may not have been like that when we were young in faith. He doesn't allow us to be tested beyond what he has prepared us for. So please take courage. The Lord hasn't forsaken you. I think it's from Hebrews 13. It says, "Let your conversation be without covetousness, and be content with such things as you have. For he has said, I will never leave you nor forsake you. So that a person may boldly say, the Lord is my helper. What shall man do unto me?" May God bless you.